When we think of the great unknown, our eyes naturally drift upward toward the stars. We dream of walking on the moon, colonizing Mars, and reaching out into the freezing void of deep space. But we often forget that right here on Earth, beneath the rolling waves of our own oceans, lies a frontier that is arguably more hostile, more alien, and more mysterious than the surface of another planet. For over 6 decades, a very small, incredibly brave group of humans has been attempting to journey to the absolute lowest point on the globe. Each time they dive, these explorers descend nearly 7 miles through an abyss of total, suffocating darkness. They willingly subject themselves to pressures that would crush military-grade titanium, all to reach a place so impossibly remote that more human beings have walked on the lunar surface than have touched this ocean floor. The question that has haunted marine biologists, geologists, and explorers for a century is simple. What is actually down there? What exists in the crushing, lightless void at the bottom of the Mariana Trench? And why is the truth both more beautiful and more profoundly disturbing than anyone could have ever anticipated? To understand the sheer scale of the Mariana Trench, we have to look at the western Pacific Ocean, roughly 200 miles southwest of the U.S. territory of Guam. If you were to drain the oceans, you would see a massive, crescent-shaped scar slashed across the Earth's crust. It stretches for about 1,580 miles from north to south, making it one of the longest continuous geological features on the planet. But it isn't the length that makes the Mariana Trench an object of fascination and terror. It is the drop. The trench plunges to a maximum recorded depth of just over 36,000 feet at a depression known as the Challenger Deep, named after the British Royal Navy ship HMS Challenger, whose crew first attempted to measure this abyss back in 1875. Let's put 36,000 feet into perspective. If you were to somehow rip Mount Everest out of the Himalayas and drop it base first into the Challenger Deep, the peak of the tallest mountain on Earth would still be completely submerged under more than a mile of dark water. The Mariana Trench isn't just a deep canyon, it is the absolute basement of the Earth. It is the lowest elevation of our planet's crust and undeniably the most extreme environment on the globe. Geologically speaking, the trench is the violent result of a slow-motion collision that has been playing out for millions of years. This is a subduction zone. On one side, you have the massive Pacific tectonic plate, acting like a planetary conveyor belt moving steadily westward. On the other side is the smaller Mariana plate. When these two colossal slabs of the Earth's crust collide, they don't simply buckle to form mountains. Instead, the older, colder, and heavier Pacific plate is forced downward, diving deep beneath the Mariana plate and plunging directly into the Earth's superheated mantle. Right at the seam where the crust violently tears and folds downward, the trench is born. And the crust being dragged down here is ancient. This section of the Pacific plate is roughly 170 million years old, meaning the rock forming the floor of the trench was born during the age of the dinosaurs. Because this oceanic crust is so old, it is incredibly dense, allowing it to sink deeper into the mantle than anywhere else on Earth. But what would actually happen to you if you tried to make the journey down? If an unprotected human were instantly teleported to the Challenger Deep, the end would be violently instantaneous. At 36,000 feet down, the water pressure is more than 1,000 times greater than what we experience at sea level. That is the equivalent of 8 tons of physical force pressing relentlessly against every single square inch of your body. Imagine the weight of 3 full-sized SUV vehicles balanced perfectly on your thumbnail. At that unimaginable pressure, the oxygen in your lungs would compress to nothing. Your skeletal structure would shatter into dust, and the very proteins folding your cells together would physically collapse. Furthermore, the environment is fundamentally hostile to life as we know it. The temperature hovers just a razor's edge above freezing, usually sitting between 34 and 39 degrees Fahrenheit. And then there is the darkness. Sunlight is a fragile thing in the ocean. It completely surrenders to the black by about 3,000 feet. By the time you reach the Challenger Deep, you're in a realm where no photon from our sun has ever penetrated. The concept of day and night, of seasons, of time itself ceases to exist. For the vast majority of human history, the scientific consensus was absolute. Nothing could possibly survive down there. The crushing physics, the freezing cold, the absolute lack of solar energy for photosynthesis, it all pointed to a sterile, dead abyss. The challenge wasn't proving life existed there. The challenge was simply building a machine that could reach the bottom to confirm the wasteland. That narrative changed forever on January 23, 1960. Two men, U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh and Swiss engineer Jacques Piccard, climbed into a claustrophobic steel sphere barely 7 feet in diameter, sealed the heavy metal hatch, and initiated the longest, most dangerous vertical drop in human history. Their vessel was the Trieste, a bizarre experimental craft called a bathystape. It looked less like a modern submarine and more like an underwater blimp. It utilized a massive balloon-like tank filled with highly buoyant aviation gasoline, beneath which hung the tiny, ultra-thick steel sphere that housed the crew. It was a primitive, terrifying machine. There were no robotic arms, no external floodlights, and no high-definition cameras. The mission was purely about survival. The descent took a grueling 4 hours and 47 minutes, but as they passed 30,000 feet, the ocean reminded them who was in charge. A loud, violent crack echoed through the tiny cabin, shaking the entire vessel. The immense compounding pressure had physically fractured one of the outer plexiglass viewports.
What is happening?
Sitting in a freezing steel ball with a compromised window, thousands of feet beyond any hope of rescue, Walsh and Piccard faced a terrifying choice: drop their ballast and flee to the surface, or push deeper into the dark. They chose the dark. At 10:06 p.m., the Trieste finally stirred up a cloud of pale silt as it gently touched the ocean floor at nearly 36,000 feet. The temperature inside their cramped sphere had dropped to a shivering 44 degrees Fahrenheit.
Keep it steady, Piccard!
They had exactly 20 minutes to observe this alien world before their failing life support systems would force an ascent. And as they peered through their tiny, undamaged viewport into the murky glow of their limited lights, they saw the impossible. Moving slowly, effortlessly across the freezing sediment was what Piccard later described as a flatfish, roughly a foot long. Moments later, they spotted a tiny shrimp-like creature drifting past the glass. The bottom of the world wasn't a dead zone. Life had found a way. But because the Trieste carried no cameras, they had no proof. When they surfaced and told the world about the fish, the scientific community was deeply skeptical. Biologists argued that a vertebrate fish physically could not survive that kind of pressure. But regardless of the biological debate, the engineering feat was undeniable. Humanity had touched the abyss. You would think this triumph would kick off a golden age of deep-sea exploration. Instead, we abandoned the challenge deep. We didn't go back in 2 years or 10 years. We didn't go back for over half a century. The Trieste was simply too expensive, too dangerous, and practically useless for actual scientific research. Throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the focus shifted entirely to unmanned, remote-controlled robots. ROVs became highly sophisticated, but the deepest point on Earth remained devoid of human eyes. It became a frozen moment in history, an unverified myth of a flatfish in the dark. That was until March 26, 2012, when filmmaker and ocean explorer James Cameron decided to rewrite history. Cameron squeezed himself into the Deep-Sea Challenger, a brilliant lime green torpedo-shaped submersible designed specifically to drop straight down through the water column like a stone. Cameron's mission wasn't a stunt, it was a heavily funded scientific expedition armed with high-definition 3D cameras and mechanical sampling arrays. Alone in a sphere so incredibly cramped that he couldn't even extend his arms, Cameron descended for 2.5 hours. When he hit the bottom, becoming the first human to ever make a solo dive to the Challenger Deep, the landscape he illuminated was haunting. He didn't find the bustling ecosystem Piccard claimed to have seen. Instead, Cameron described a world that was overwhelmingly lunar and desolate. It was a perfectly flat, barren plain of pale beige sediment stretching endlessly into the black. He observed a few small, ghostly amphipods, crustaceans that look a bit like translucent shrimp, but no fish, no monsters, just a profound,
heavy silence. A mechanical failure with the sub's hydraulic lines ultimately cut his mission short, forcing a descent. But the real treasure was in the mud he brought back. Laboratory analysis of the sediment revealed 68 entirely new species of organisms, mostly extremophile bacteria. The deep wasn't dead, the life was just hiding in the microscopic realm. This single dive reignited our obsession with the trench. 7 years later, in 2019, American explorer Victor Vescovis arrived with the limiting factor, a state-of-the-art titanium submersible built to treat the Challenger Deep not as a one-time stunt, but as a repeatable commute. Vescovis didn't just dive once, he went back again and again, spending countless hours mapping the seafloor, pulling up rocks, and catching wildlife. Vescovis' team discovered vibrant, chemically altered rocky outcrops, proving the trench was geologically alive. They filmed sea cucumbers slowly vacuuming the ancient mud and discovered 4 entirely new species of giant amphipods. But amidst the triumph of charting this untouched frontier, Vescovis made a discovery that broke the hearts of oceanographers worldwide. Lying half-buried in the sediment at the very deepest point on planet Earth, in a location shielded by 7 miles of crushing water, was a plastic shopping bag, and nearby, candy wrappers. It was a violent, stark reminder of humanity's incredibly heavy footprint. The pollution didn't stop at the wrappers. When scientists dissected the newly discovered deep-sea amphipods brought to the surface, they found microscopic shards of artificial microplastics embedded deep within their tissue. The garbage we throw away on the sunlit surface eventually sinks. It falls like a slow, toxic snow, eventually settling at the absolute bottom of the world, where it is consumed by animals that have never even seen the sun. We had managed to pollute a world before we had even fully discovered it. Yet, despite our intrusion, the biology of the Mariana Trench remains a masterclass in extreme survival. So how do they do it? How does a living, breathing animal survive pressure that would crush a submarine? The answer lies in a biochemical miracle. Deep-sea creatures like the Mariana snailfish, the deepest living fish ever discovered at over 26,000 feet, have completely abandoned rigid bone structures. Their skeletons are made of highly flexible cartilage. Their bodies are gelatinous, completely lacking the gas-filled swim bladders that shallow water fish use to float, which would instantly implode down here.
More importantly, these animals pump their own cells full of a specialized molecule called TMAO. This chemical acts like a microscopic scaffolding, preventing water pressure from crushing the proteins inside their cells. The deeper an animal lives, the more TMAO it requires. We've found supergiant amphipods growing up to 7 inches long that literally pull toxic aluminum out of the seafloor mud and use it to forge armored exoskeletons, a biological trick seen nowhere else on the planet. We've found the ghostly Dumbo octopus navigating the midnight zone with large ear-like fins, entirely lacking an ink sac because there is absolutely no light and nothing to hide from it. But the most paradigm-shifting discovery occurred very recently, between August and November of 2021. A Chinese expedition utilizing the submersible Fendoza conducted 33 consecutive dives into the trench. What they found completely shattered our understanding of deep-sea ecology. At a staggering depth of over 31,000 feet, they didn't just find isolated, struggling organisms. They found a bustling, densely packed metropolis of life. They discovered massive fields of pale clams and dense forests of tube worms swaying in the dark ocean currents. This was a massive chemosynthetic community. These animals do not rely on the sun. They don't care if the sun burns out tomorrow. Instead, they cluster around microscopic cracks in the Earth's crust, thriving on thick microbial mats that feed directly on toxic methane gas and minerals seeping from the Earth's interior. It is an ecosystem fueled by geology, not biology. The scientists described it as a literal river of life flowing along the dead trench floor.
The implications of this are absolutely staggering, and they stretch far beyond our own planet. If vast, complex ecosystems can thrive in the crushing, freezing, pitch-black abyss of the Mariana Trench, sustained entirely by the chemical heat of the Earth's crust, it changes how we look at the stars. It means that beneath the miles-thick ice sheets of Jupiter's moon Europa or Saturn's moon Enceladus, where similar deep-water trenches and hydrothermal vents are theorized to exist, alien life might not just be possible, it might be flourishing in the dark. The Mariana Trench is no longer just a dark void on a map. It is a profound mirror. It holds the bizarre chemical secrets to the very origins of life on Earth, showing us how biology can conquer the impossible. Yet, with plastic in the bellies of its most isolated creatures, it also reflects the inescapable reach of human civilization. It reminds us that no matter how deep, how dark, or how extreme a place might be on this planet, everything is connected.